So SketchUp, it's a good transition point for us to move in and out of some of these other utilities and tools that we need in our toolbox in order to get from point A to point B.
All right, hello and welcome to SketchUp Talk, the official SketchUp podcast. Today we're going to talk about a SketchUp. I am your host, Aaron. With me, as always, is my co-host, Matt. How's it going, Matt?
It's going great. I'm excited to talk SketchUp.
And with us also is our producer, Aubrey. Hi, Aubrey.
Hello, hello.
All right, so we have a fun one today because we are going to be talking to Steve Lieberman. And I don't know. So this is the part I stumble, right? Because I talked last time about how I feel like when I do try to introduce somebody's work, I leave something out, I sell them short, or I'm excited and I oversell. So we could say he's a production designer. I think that's correct. That's the right thing to say, right? That's the right term. Probably not.
Sounds right to me.
Yeah.
We'll let him clear all this up. It's good we have him here to cover
true.
Our tracks, and just in case we need to.
Yeah, it's going to be a fun one, though. We're going to talk about some SketchUp. We're going to talk about music festivals and nightclubs. It's going to be cool. And we are, once again, filming in front of a not live, not studio audience. Well, a live, but not studio audience. So welcome to everybody who's in our digital recording studio with us today.
Yeah, that's right. So we'll take some questions and answers from people at the end of the show. But for you listening later, you'll notice no difference, of course. But this will be quite a great episode. We're talking pro workflows all season on SketchUp Talk this season. So he's definitely got plenty to spare and to share. And I'm super interested to hear kind of, how do you convey the experience that you would get from going into one of these literally like bonkers nightclubs or festivals that, he does these renderings for. I'm like, these are a world all their own. So can't wait to hear from him.
I wonder if that term is in the design brief occasionally. So we're going to need it to be bonkers, like maybe 7 out of 10 bonkersness.
Yeah, the bonkers scale is going off the charts.
All right. Well, I figure we've talked, probably ruined what he actually does enough by now that we should probably bring him in so he can defend the work he actually does.
Good point.
But let's bring him on, everybody. Our guest for today, Stephen Lieberman.
Big hand. All right. Yeah.
That was funny, guys. How are you?
Thanks.
Yeah.
Good.
And actually, like
us.
your intro music, I was really hoping that it would have been like a remix with a little bit more like techno edge, but we could talk about that later. Maybe when you cut this thing up and you edit it, maybe we could talk about just kind of like putting a little bit more like little filtering on that.
Well, maybe that'll be our outro music. We'll have the Steve Lieberman version.
Cool.
The Lieberman remix.
It's good to see you both. Hi, Aubrey, in the background.
Hello.
Hello.
That's my one sentence now.
And you guys got it right. Production designer actually is fine. That's kind of like the blanket statement. So we're good with that. And the bonkers scale, I guess we can use that. It's that's fine. We can use the bonker scale, but we like to go above 7. We like to pin the needle. Let's just pin it all the way over.
Mm-hmm. Love it.
How much bonkers we got? Yeah, that's good.
Plenty, dude. I don't know that 50 minutes is going to cover that bucket.
So we got it right with production designer, right. But let's talk a little bit about what production design is. So I'll hand that completely over to you.
Production design has been an evolution in kind of what we do in the format of what these shows are. Production designer, it kind of runs the format. Obviously, my company is called SJ Lighting. When I started doing this back in the mid 90s, we were lighting designers, we were lighting directors, lighting programmers, and as shows and this whole culture has evolved, it's turned into lighting in video, lighting in scenic, lighting in production, to where it's not just lighting anymore. You have to control the environment. So it's production environment designs. production experience designs. So I'm not even sure there's one term, one adjective of descriptive text that really covers what we do. You have to be a chameleon in these environments in order to accommodate, the aesthetics and the philosophies that you're trying to articulate and illustrate to your audience. But production designer kind of just gets the job done and is a good blanket statement.
That works. It's good to have a term that you can defer back to. So you mentioned the environments. You do have specific venues or environments that you primarily focus on.
Correct. I've always been a dance music fan. I've always been a music fan in general. And for me, one of the driving motivational forces, which keeps me challenged and interested in what I do, is the music-driven environments. So that's why you'll see, if you look through kind of the body of work that we produce, it's music festivals, tours, and mostly dance music artists and nightclubs, which is just because, for me, that's what's, my heart's in that sort of stuff. So we like to stay in those environments and create those dance music vibes. Plus, music is a connector between all walks of life. And that's the best mix of people and styles and where it's really a laboratory and experiment where you can experiment with new ideas and push it and really take things out to the edge without being restricted with all the structure and rules that maybe apply to traditional studies of the fine arts.
Well, it's something too that when you talk about the events that you're talking about, it goes beyond just music. It's not like the artist just gets up there and presents his music. That's where you come in. It's taking it from just the auditory and making it, as many senses as can get involved, and just exploding it that way.
Correct. And it's an overused term, but the term immersive is really, it's a goal, right? You want to achieve that immersive environment as much as we can pull you in to the world where the performer is illustrating and executing his music, and we are enhancing that experience with, the visual senses. Whether it's a front-loaded stage or it's a full 360 environment or some sort of combination of both of those items in order to really you forget about what's going on in the outside world and we've just pulled you into the matrix.
Yeah, I love that. Because I feel like it must be so hard because people obviously look forward to the music, but they also look forward to this experience. And I feel like you always want to have that otherworldly, explosion for them to walk into. How do you continue to level up and bring new things and change people's mind, or I guess have something new for people to experience?
I think as a designer and as someone who works in the creative world professionally, and I think any of your listeners and yourselves, when you work in creative, you understand that we are our own worst critics. So we're always more critical of our work than anyone else could ever be, and we pick it apart to the forensic level. So just by the nature of my personality being an obsessive, compulsive, neurotic human being, that's one of the self-driving forces of taking a design element and looking at it and going, oh my God, what the hell was I even thinking there? I need to change this and do that. And I'm just always motivated to kind of twist and turn the knobs and push the handles and just kind of manipulate your experience. So how do I come up with that? I don't know. I'm just out of my mind. And, we're back to the bonker scale. Bing, I want to just pin it to the wall. So we're just always, again, it's a laboratory. It's experimentation of what we're trying to do in the dance music world, in the festival world. The creativity level of what you're allowed to kind of express yourself with and the latitude that you're giving in these areas, you can go a lot further than you could in more traditional environments where this trade would be practiced in a theater or Broadway environment, in a television environment, in a film environment. The science takes precedence and the application takes precedence more than kind of doing more obtuse and avant-garde kind of environments. you need to apply those rules also. And there's some deficiency out there. Like you'll notice some shows maybe are a little deficient in areas where the stage is not lit appropriately because everything's just kind of pointed in the audience. So you still have to add that balance and understand the nuances and what the trade actually is. But when you get into the dance music culture and in the festival culture and the nightclub culture, you can do crazier stuff.
So did you start in that? Sorry, Aaron, real quick. But
he's just stepping on you, man. That's all right.
I'm just going to listen.
You go ahead, man. You do you.
Thanks, Steve. I appreciate your support. I was wondering if you started off in that more conservative world. Like, did you start in the stage or other like venues and then move to this, insane festival circuit, or how did your career move?
My path to where I currently am now is very non-traditional. As a young person, I worked in a nightclub starting in 1986. Now, that wasn't doing production. That was just a kid with a job at a club, cleaning glass and sweeping and mopping floors and as a barback. But that very quickly turned into something that I had a very high level of interest in, and more than obviously mopping up and changing out liquor and juice. It was more like, what's going on? What is this environment I'm in? Like, what is this place? Like, this is awesome and crazy and dangerous and, in some aspects, but like very intriguing. So from there, I just never left that environment, starting at a young age and all through college. The rave scene kind of came to the United States in the early 90s. I quickly discovered those events, and more than just like the dancing event, it was this whole immersive experience. Whilst they were underground and a lot of them were not necessarily like sanctioned events where you're buying tickets through traditional channels the way things are now, it was still this whole subculture and phenomenon that was creating these environments of lighting and sound and these auditory experiences, which were really fantastic. So from there, it just kind of evolved. In college, I had managed a bar. We were still doing rave. I was working at raves in the summer when I was not in school. I had plans to go to law school, took my LSATs. And then if my wife's listening right now, she knows this story all too well, sitting at her kitchen table in college with a stack of law school applications. And I looked at her and I said, I'm not going back to school. I am literally the worst student ever. And spending 3 more years in a university, I was like, so I have this genius idea. I'm going to take my college education and I'm going to go work in a club in New York. Let's see how that works out. And so I capitalized on bad decisions in an effort to get to where I am now. But what was kind of the extraordinary part of that journey to present day is that there were really not a lot of us doing that particular genre. Back then, doing raves, because we didn't call them festivals back then, they were just down and dirty raves. Doing raves was literally the bottom of the barrel for those who were professional in the lighting and production trade. We were looked at as the dogs of the industry. You wanted to be in rock and roll touring, or you wanted to be in TV, film, or anything, or corporates and industrials, but raves, like, really, dude? Like, could you not get another gig? And now all of a sudden you fast forward, nearly 30 years later, everybody wants this gig because this subculture, whilst it's still a subculture, is a subculture that brings in, 150,000 people to one festival, as opposed to, 1,200 kids into a warehouse behind, in some sort of dirty field in the back of Sheepshead Bay, Brooklyn somewhere, so.
That's so cool to hear because it always seems like those kind of situations, like where you have nothing to lose and you're just like, nobody cares what you're doing. That's when you get the most like experimental and like weird, cool stuff happening, but it seems like you've kept that sort of that experimental spirit and that pushing the boundaries of what people come to expect. And you've kept that, that idea throughout your entire career. So that seemed really cool.
It has, and thank you. But again, like going back to some of the other things I've said, I've capitalized on bad decisions. So it just was it was just a good gamble, which I didn't know as a younger person. You don't think about the repercussions of what's going to happen if I make these decisions now. What happens in 30 years from now? Like, is this still a relevant job, or am I now just a fool, working at a show that pays nothing and I have no sort of stability in life and I'm just kind of bouncing around in the world? And as it turns out, it was I rolled the dice and we hit, and it turned into a real industry, a viable industry, where now the production community globally supports what we do, and it has for a decade plus or more, to the level that we're at. And it seems to be continuing to grow to where mainstream sees dance music culture as they understand what that culture is. Whether you're a fan of the music or not, that's subjective. That's your opinion. But it's a real industry. We're here. We're not going anywhere.
Yeah, the art and the final product is undeniable, regardless
Correct.
of what you think of the music. So yeah. That's it's impressive.
So I was wondering, what does it look like when you get a design brief? When somebody comes up to you and goes, okay, we have, these artists are playing. Do you listen to their music? Do you talk to them? How do you figure out, like, what's this going to look like?
There is no one formula that you can apply to anything, and especially in the creative, you can use general guidelines, but there are guidelines to different musical genres. There's cultural differences between some of the musical genres, from trance to drum and bass to techno. There's major cultural differences, and understanding what those differences are will definitely give you an advantage and a better opportunity to design what's appropriate for those styles. So a trance stage is going to be a very different environment from a techno stage. And today, like the techno scene, the techno world, from Tulum to Ibiza to the United States and other areas, gets a very specific type of crowd. That crowd, for instance, tends to hang out and have a VIP area on the stage behind the DJ. There's an entourage. There's all these people that are VIP, super VIP industry, and they hang out there on top of what the crowd is. However, if you go to like a trance environment, which is a different style of dance music, it's going to be a sterile stage. It's going to be the DJ. That maybe his manager and agent will be hiding and kind of hovering behind him to just make sure his cigarettes are lit and he has a cold beer when he needs them, he or she or whoever. But you're not going to see a whole entourage of people kind of partying on the stage. And then, the drum and bass culture is probably more similar to the techno scene, except maybe they're a little bit rowdier and bouncier, so we know that we need to reinforce the deck because, there could be 100 people up there jumping up and down. So there's things that definitely influence what you're going to design. And then, if it's a specific artist, they might have specific requirements, whether it's video or a look that they're trying to do, or things as simple as, hey, a DJ showing up and their management comes over to the control position and dictates kind of colors to use or colors to stay away from, or just a general feel and philosophy to how they want their show to flow for their style of music. Did I answer the question, or did I dance around it?
That was a good one. No, that was. I mean,
I like to dance around questions sometimes too and spin it, and then I have no idea what the hell you even asked. And then I go, I gave you so much information. If you could cherry pick something out of that and use it as an answer to whatever you said, because I don't remember, cool.
Sometimes the answer to a question is there's not an answer to that question. And
Right.
and that's I think that's kind of where we ended up there's not a standard way to get those design briefs. It's different all the time. That's awesome. I mean, I think that there's probably two different kinds of designers out there. Like, thinking in a bigger sense, there's the people who want to like get the design brief to fit inside of, check these boxes and here's the answers to these questions. And then there's the people who would fall more on the creative side of the design process where, let's have a conversation and figure something out. And that's definitely, I'm seeing you're definitely one more than the other. I get that feeling.
Right.
Like you said, though, there does have to be a balance, though, right? Because you have to say, okay, but we can only do this much with lights. We can only do this much, whatever.
The cliche, art imitates life, right? of course there has to be a balance. There has to be a balance in all of these things because your crowd will understand if it's out of balance. So that's something that you have to consider in your design when it comes to actually laying out of production details and commodities, on how you lay out the proportions of a stage, how you lay out the VIP areas, how a site plan's laid out. The balance is part of all of it. So it has to be an overall kind of umbrella to the philosophy of what's going on. And then that kind of steps down as you construct or deconstruct what your environment is. But that's just a philosophy. Mm-hmm. And if that's like your daily philosophy of how you live your life, that's going to kind of be illustrated and expressed when you do design work. It's impossible not to. Like, I think, even for me, like, I have a style. I mean, the way we dress, the way we designed, the way we talk, the way we behave, there's a style, there's, whatever you want to call it, a swagger. So if you see a design that's come out of my office, you might recognize some features or aesthetics that maybe go from different areas, just ways that I think are philosophies and methodology that works. So some people might say, oh, Lieberman or SJ definitely did that. I could tell by either the way that the show is being operated or by the way the show's designed. And there's other designers like I know when it's somebody else. And that's just part of who we are as a designer. When you buy a piece of artwork or you have something on your wall, a painting, there's a style. So that kind of comes through. We're not robots.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, it seems like that's something that works to your advantage because you get people who are coming to you who know your style. I mean, okay, I guess that's a question. Do you have people come to you who are totally outside of what you would want to do, who are, in the wrong place? Like, do you have people come in, you're like, oh yeah, I'm not going to be able to do your Riverdance concert because it's really not my thing.
It happens. Yeah, of course. Yeah, it doesn't happen too often because chances are, if we end up communicating with each other, what we do here, and we have a specific style, and we're aggressive. Like, if you don't want the aggressive style, knife edge, run you over with a truck, maybe we're not the guys.
I like that.
That's awesome.
That sounds good.
Dude, it's so cool that you have like this, kind of vision that you have built your brand and your company around. And I'm interested to hear how do you keep that consistent through, obviously you have some people working for you. How, do you oversee your teams and ensure that kind of brand consistency and that vision shows through in the final product?
Right. Well, the common thread through this whole podcast is going to be my obsessive, neurotic, compulsive disorder, right? That goes through. So yes, everybody who works here, they are all very talented designers in their own right. But since my name's on the door and the buck stops here, I'm involved in all of it. But they're all super, super talented individuals, and I give them the latitude to express themselves. However, it all still has to follow the philosophy of what the brand SJ Lighting is. So yes, I bounce from job to job, and every one of the guys here, has certain projects that they're working on, and we have conversations about it. We go back and forth, we redline, we have roundtable, we discuss, we come up with ideas and philosophies that work, and then they're responsible for taking the projects to the finish line. So it's collaborative, and I sorry to jump on your head there. I encourage all of them to really express themselves creatively also, because as a designer, I don't want just somebody who's just drafting here. I need you to put your designer hat on and to kind of flex a little bit. And I'm not shy either. So if something doesn't work, I try to tell you in the nicest possible way, but without any uncertainty. I like what you did as far as the approach, but what's designed doesn't work. Or the other way, hey, that's a home run. I didn't even think of that. Brilliant. Let's work off of that and let's move. And now let's start going down this path and try to figure out what the next problem is that we need to solve.
That's awesome. I love that there's still your name's on the door, but there's still a collaborative group to work in. That's awesome. And that's the key.
We are an
to
entity.
do things right. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, here's the thing about starting a business. If I could go back in time and tell my younger self, like, hey, when you start a business, don't ever use your initials. Like, I would absolutely do that. Like, there's no exit strategy there. Like, if you ever want to sell the company to somebody else, like, what the hell do you do with a company that's got your initials on the door, right?
You got to come up with something else that it stands for, right?
But at the end of the day, SJ Lighting is an entity. What's what I want it to be. I want it to be more than me. However, obviously, I'm kind of the linchpin in all of this. But it is an entity, and everyone who works here, from my wife, who's my business partner, to the 3 employees that we have, to the subcontractors that support us on all of our events, like, we're all part of the same team with the same goal in mind, like putting on a great show and executing it at the highest levels. So that's important. That's not just me. I can't take credit for all of that. I might roll the dice and go out there and try some new things, or get a new client, or do something that's maybe risky. It's not Sloppy Joe's, by the way. It's my initials. Funny, Andy. Right? All right,
great. Keep an eye on the chat. Make
yeah,
sure
I see that one popped Sloppy Joe. Actually, my children's names are Sophia and Jack, so it just kind of worked out because obviously Stephen, and my middle name's Joseph, so Stephen Joseph, whatever.
It sounds like you just made a family business, and they have to get into it.
Yeah.
And you're like, I named it after you. You got to do it.
So actually, I've had several lighting companies over the years, and when we came out to California, which was in 2001, we had to. It's Joseph. When it came in 2001, we had to. I sold my last company to my partners. We got bought out and we moved out, and we had to come up with a new company. And I always laugh, and we've been holding on to this story for years. I'm a big believer in the bell curve, right? Everything in the middle. So I wanted to call the company Mediocre Lighting. I figured nobody wants the worst, and you can't necessarily afford the best. Let's just shoot for the middle, right? There'll be more work than we ever know what to do with. And people will go, hey, how'd they do? And you're going to go, it was fine. Did they do a good job? It was okay. Would you hire them again? If I had to, it was okay. It was just fine. And we'd be slammed because our price point would be somewhere in the middle. I wouldn't have to really work too hard, but there'd be so much business because it's a bell curve and everything just kind of falls in the middle. My wife thought that was the worst idea ever. So that's when I was just like, well, just screw it. We'll just call it SJ Lighting and move on with our lives. But to this day, even in the house, anytime, like we still use the joke, well, it's just mediocre lighting. So that's really where I was aiming for. I just thought we'd be able to scale the business really big because there's so much in the middle. But anyway.
Nice. I'd like to say that's a mediocre story, but I don't think it is. I think it's a great story.
It's pretty good. Yeah.
So yeah, it seems like you're always kind of pushing the boundaries. You're always, like you said, on that leading edge of like going crazy. And like, is there an example that you can think of something that you blew out of the water that like you took a big risk on and really like changed a lot of stuff? Like, did something really cool?
You just asked me which one of my children do I love the most, right? And
they're not listening.
I'm not talking about Sophia and Jack specifically. I'm talking about projects. In this instance, all of my projects are like my children, and every job presents itself with unique and discrete challenges that you need to get over. But there are definitely projects that stand out and either give you, like late night hot sweats because you're trying to figure like what the hell just happened, and in the end turn out, there's some that stand out in my mind, but every project for us, we're always trying to push the envelope. But going years back, I remember we did a club in New York, which has been closed for many years, called Crowbar. And Crowbar was like the next like explosion of club culture in New York City. And what we had built in there was so kind of loose and fast and the verge of complete chaos that like just building the place, I thought my heart was going to explode just trying to get this place executed and opened, right? And then, other venues that we've done that are, at the very edge of where we can push limits, like Live in Miami. We have 400 moving parts in this kinetic chandelier of video that undulates and moves. And, even when you operate 400 moving parts at 99%, right? That means like 2 pieces cannot work. Those 2 pieces stand out. So you're at 99% efficiency, and all of a sudden you're like, why don't those 2 pieces work? So those are the kinds of things where we're like, okay, do we want to really roll the dice or play it safe? So I'm not I didn't come here to lay up.
That's why you're not mediocre lighting.
It's a golf joke, laying up. What do we want to lay up for?
Tin cup. Go for it.
Let's go for it. Sometimes you might listen. Tiger Woods could shoot a 10 on a par 3. It could happen to anybody. So some days, you're going to put one in the water. But sorry, golf jokes.
We got a very diverse listening base. It's all right.
I'm aging myself now as well. Not only with the gray hair and the bald head, but with the stupid dad jokes.
Most people consume this audio, so your dad jokes are the only parts that'll age you. So,
okay.
So going to talk about workflow a little bit.
Yeah.
We've talked about how you basically assimilate information. You pull in information from the artist or from the venue. Yeah. What does the design look like? So I'd imagine there's multiple touch points where you come back with designs. How do you present designs back to customers? How do they give you feedback? Obviously, you can't build a huge lighting rig, set it up, turn it on, and then fine tune it there. There's got to be intermediate steps, right?
Absolutely. Design and execution of design it's an interesting path to a final result. So again, there's no one philosophy or path that is the right philosophy. It's what works for that particular instance. So sometimes it starts with, something as simple as building a Pinterest board with some ideas that inspire you. So you need to get inspiration. You need to have some sort of understanding and direction. So that's a good place to start. I mean, it's a resource that's available to all of us. And Pinterest could be a complete rabbit hole. Like you start clicking on images, you end up in brutalist architecture. And next thing you know, you're looking at, like long hair chihuahuas. I don't know how you connect the two, but it could happen, right? Mm-hmm. So we'll start there. And then, I'm also, I'm old school. I have a drafting table here. Sometimes, just pen and paper, and I'll do things. I have a computer that's a tablet also. So really the best way that I like to do it now is I will take a JPEG background of whatever the background is. So if that's a stage environment or it's just a blank canvas, I like to draw on a tablet, with a digital pen, where I can use all the tools. I can do layers. I can quickly articulate a lot of ideas just by turning layers on and off and playing with some things and using different pens. So I was waiting for you guys to kind of transition into some of the SketchUp things, but I'm going to help you out here. I actually use SketchUp for a lot of this. So I've been using SketchUp, by the way, since 2001, 2002, when it was first created by, I think it was Atlas Software, right? So I think Atlas, somewhere in Colorado, a buddy of mine turned me onto it. I was like, this is amazing and so fast. So what I use SketchUp for now a lot, on top of illustrating 3D documentation quickly, is I like to set up some base looks in SketchUp without any production in it. And I export JPEGs in various perspective, flat, plan, elevation, and then I put it in a little folder in my project folders called Sketch. And then I open up, it's an Autodesk program called Sketchbook, right? And I open up Sketchbook and I import the JPEG, I put it on a layer and I sketch over it. And then I can adjust, the opacity of the background, and I could do mirror tools and all sorts of things there and different brushes and different techniques. And that's where I start ideas. And what's cool about that is, whereas before I had to draw on a piece of paper and show my office or scan it in or do something, this I can export JPEGs and I can put it in the folder. So if I'm in another part of the world, just tell the guys, hey, just go into the sketch folder and you're going to see, idea 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, and it's got to be some sort of blend of those things. And that's where we start. And then from there, once we kind of get hold of the path that we want to go on, we take those sketches and we start to transform them maybe into a model. So maybe we stay in SketchUp in that instance, and I might model. I have thousands and thousands of custom built components and blocks and models for SketchUp because I've used it for so long. So I can quickly build bits and pieces of existing production commodities and assemble something that I want to see and then share it with my office. And from there, we use more traditional drafting tools. While for years we actually did use SketchUp and layout, and we still use that when we need to get something done very quickly. In the collaborative environment where you need to share backgrounds and X references, a lot of it ends up being, in the production world, it ends up being Vectorworks. In the permanent installation and architecture world, it's Revit mostly now, and AutoCAD. And then for rendering, we take SketchUp models and we bring them right into Cinema 4D, and we have plugins for that to illustrate lighting. And now, for the past year we've been heavily vested in Unreal Engine. So Unreal Engine, we take SketchUp right into Unreal Engine as well, and back and forth. So SketchUp it's like the gateway drug for us, right? Kind of leads to other things. So it's a good transition point for us to move in and out of some of these other utilities and tools that we need in our toolbox in order to get from point A to point B. In addition to that, like every one of the workstations in my office has a SketchUp license. It's not obviously the price point of putting an Autodesk license on every machine compared to a SketchUp license, not the same. So for me, because I pay for all of these licenses, I don't keep the Revit licenses and the Vectorworks licenses on my personal machine because the guys need to do the drafting, but SketchUp is on every one of my personal machines. So if I'm out of town, I need to do something and I need to put together something more than just a hand sketch, whether it's digital pen and paper or real pen and paper, I can do it in SketchUp. It's to scale. I can do a fly through. I can give them all of these details that I want. Or if nobody's answering my phone, which they better, but if they don't, I can also put together something in layout with details. And, even like when I'm working on stuff around the house, I'm neurotic about things. So my wife wants to hang a picture on the wall. It has to end up in layout somehow. Measured with the material of the picture and exactly. And she's like, just put the picture on the wall. I go, hold on a minute. Do you want it here? I've measured, like I take my laser out, so it gives me the flexibility to be dimensionally accurate, to illustrate the idea in 3D and fly you through in various perspectives. And it allows me to transition into every other piece of software that I have in my office with no exceptions.
Yeah, it seems like you're echoing what a lot of people are saying this entire season, talking about pro workflows of, right, being able to plug and play with different softwares really easily, and using SketchUp for whatever makes the most sense for you. And right. I'd love to hear it, of course. But I'm interested to hear, like, obviously you use a lot of other softwares. You come into stuff is in your periphery, in your orbit. And right. Why I'm interested to hear why you've stuck with SketchUp for 20 years. That's like an incredible length of time to be using one particular tool. Why do you think you've stuck with it all this time?
Well, people I think tend to stick with what they know. So for me, I can move around SketchUp very quickly, and it's very fast. Like if I need to get an idea out quickly, and even if I'm not using my blocks and models, if I want to just express myself just through base geometry, right? I can draw something. I can import a JPEG into SketchUp. I can trace it. In addition, I can import an AutoCAD file. I can import, an Illustrator file or something, break it down into some sort of vector-based import, and quickly get things done and extrude it or pull it apart, stretch it, scale it, like in minutes. And then even if I'm not taking it into layout where I'm truly going to document it, I can just run somebody through a model and show them exactly what I want. Now, if you don't know how to document it properly, that's a whole nother set of circumstances that you need to tackle. I know a lot of people who are very good at the modeling and articulating what they want, but you're like, can you give me your document set? They're like, absolutely not. I have no idea how to set sections. I don't know how to import different views into layout. I don't know how to set scale. They don't know how to do any of that. But if you just sit in front of their computer, they could kind of spin you around in the mouse and go, look what I built. That's cool. There's another skill set that you need if you actually want to use that software at a professional level and be able to produce a drawing that you can deliver to a client for a fee. You better know how to take it all the way to the finish line. But it allows you to just kind of express an idea very quickly. And then if you need to move over to another platform, it's that portal into all these other places super fast.
For sure. So yeah, there's definitely a certain thing, like there's stuff you can explain to people through orbiting a model. But when I first saw it, like the work that you do, I'm like, use a SketchUp for that? Because it's like lighting stuff, and it's like, maybe what SketchUp is not like great for, but obviously you move to these other softwares. And is there other kind of experiential kind of communication tools that you use? Like, do you use like VR or other things to get that idea into your client's head of what it's going to actually feel like?
We have exported into VR, stereoscopic, 3D. I mean, we've done all of that. But I think what works best is just a video render. There's nothing better than a video render. And for that, we use either Cinema 4D and then compiled into After Effects, or now with Unreal Engine, we can do the same workflow with Unreal in like 10% the time that it takes to go out of Cinema. It's a different level of quality and photometric data that's coming through, but it still looks cool, right? Whereas Cinema, with the plugins that we use, might be more photometrically accurate for what we're trying to achieve. Unreal Engine is making leaps and bounds, and version 5, when that comes up, I think everyone who uses Unreal, we're all anticipating this version 5 to change the world. Well, we're going to see. We're hopeful that it's going to be the next level of what we're going to do, and that's also why we're moving towards that platform, because we're trying to stay future forward and prepared for what's coming next, and we want to be in front of the curve. Hopefully it's not a tidal wave that just runs over us, but we want to get out in front.
That's awesome. Yeah, it seems like for something like a light, heavy, almost. I mean, I feel like one of the things you try to create with the experiences is a disconnect from hard reality, right? You're trying to like break away from that light, sound. That's the point you're focusing on. So almost photorealistic rendering actually seems kind of the opposite of doing that. So I feel like something like a quick real-time render.
I mean, yes, the purpose of going to see a show and going to see an environment is an escape, right? It's entertainment. You're unplugging from what the real world is. But I still want to give you a realistic idea of what this environment is that you're getting into. And that's where the photoreal comment kind of comes from and where you need to tie it back to. We're not just taking you down the street to the supermarket to go grocery shopping. We're taking you into another world, but what you see in a render, I want it to be as realistic as possible as to what you see when you get out in front of it, right? And that's what's important to us when it comes to our digital presentations. Whether it's using SketchUp or whether it's using Unreal or Cinema 4D or Vectorworks or AutoCAD or Revit or any of these other tools that are available. And there's a whole list of other pre-visualization, rendering, and drafting and development tools that I'm sure, any of the other designers that are listening to this or just in general that are utilized. These are tools in our toolbox. What is your ultimate goal? All because you have a toolbox full of things doesn't mean you take them out for every job. What do you need to achieve, the best results for whatever this project may be? And for us, not trying to sell anybody SketchUp, but there's a reason I've used it for so long, is because that at least helps me transition from point A to point B. Sometimes it's the finish line, and sometimes it's just a piece of the puzzle, but it's a tool in the toolbox, right? So it's a utility that's there when I need it, and it just happens to be one of the most widely used tools for me. One of the most used tools for me, like commonly taken out of the toolbox all the time.
Well, speaking of tools, do you use extensions in SketchUp, or are you more
Absolutely.
of a purist? All right,
No.
Let's hear them. What are your favorite extensions?
I'm going to open it up real quick, just as a quick reminder for myself.
I like it.
I absolutely use the Imperial to metric because we have a lot of international clients. So I can very quickly enter in dimensions in metric or Imperial and switch between them for measurement purposes. I use So that one's called toggle units. Sorry, I have it open right now. So
sure.
And I've actually streamlined what my extensions are. I used to have so many of them, I couldn't even keep track. But now the ones that I use most is there's one called Center on Origin. So anytime I bring in a background, I always center it wherever that is. Okay. I use the JS Align, which will it's an alignment tool for XYZ. So if things get drawn out of plane, I could quickly get it in there. There's a tool called Ruby Sketch Scale Tool. So that is invaluable. So if I draw something, let's say I'm just drawing base geometry, but I didn't really, I got it close, but let's say for instance, truss comes in 5, 8, 10-foot sections, and I drew something at 10 foot, 8.65 inches. That doesn't quite work. So I can quickly just grab that and I could click the 2 datum points and go, you're now 10 feet, and it'll just scale that item or scale the whole drawing, right? That one's awesome. Make faces. So if I draw geometry and I'm missing a face, and weld. I also use, there's a purge plugin for an extension so that you don't have to go manually purge items. I can purge, and then it gives me do you want to purge layers, materials, styles, objects. So after I'm working on things, when if I have to do some housekeeping, I always go in and I purge so that the file size quickly drops down so it becomes manageable. Let's see if there's anything else in here. No, those are pretty much my go-tos. I have others, but I've kind of gotten away from them because I have pipe along path. Which
for drawing trusses, that's essential.
I use mirror selection, add center point. So if you're drawing a custom detail, I like to add a center point, and then and if I make it a component, I make that the XYZ axis. And also I like to line up all my XYZ axis. So if I do a block replace or component replace, that they line up in exactly the same format. So you have to understand where things align. And then mirror, obviously, if I'm drawing something symmetrical, I can just draw one side, and once I'm satisfied with it, I could mirror it. Pipe along path is pretty cool. If I'm doing any custom pipe details, I can draw a line, and then I can set how many faces and how many sides and outside dimensions, outside diameter, inside diameter, and I can build custom pipes.
Yeah, that's a good one. That's a fun one.
So those are my go-tos.
That's great.
I never learned how to write the scripts. I tried a couple times and it wasn't for me.
No, you're in good company. That's not a thing that there's people who can do that, and I won't insult them by trying to join your group.
They can see it. They know, they speak that language. And for me, it was always a struggle. And I would, I tried hijacking some scripts off the internet and seeing if I could basically, reverse engineer what's going on. And I was like, I don't get it. So I'll pay somebody for that. If I need it.
You have a wonderful brain that helps you create experiences for events. And I think you should just revel in that. And it's okay to not be able to program. I've made peace with it too. It's okay.
Yeah. Agreed.
Cool. Well, I think that, so we're about at time right now. So, I guess any last words, anything you want to throw out to any of our listeners or words of advice, anything along those lines?
If you're a designer, again, I tend to repeat myself. So SketchUp is a fantastic tool, but there's lots of CAD files that are fantastic tools. So don't limit yourself to one discipline, to one style. You need to add as many resources as you're comfortable with so that you can get yourself to achieve the results that you're trying to achieve. And if SketchUp gives you that opportunity to get closer to the end zone, then I highly encourage you. And at the same time, it's reasonable. There's solid support. There's a really wide base of SketchUp users, and especially in the United States, there's a ton of them. There's a free version. There's so many resources that are available, and it's an invaluable tool for me. On top of that, though, again, it's just a tool. So at the end of the day, the ideas, the designs, the aesthetics and the philosophies that you're trying to, put forth really come from in here and from in here. It's just how do you express yourself, and you just need these tools to enable that. So, that's it. That's all I got for you.
That's good. I appreciate it. This has been a lot of fun because Yeah,
I enjoyed it.
these
Thank
are
you.
very unique designs and very unique take on how to design that. I think we've really appreciated this. This is great.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being part of SketchUp Talk, Steve.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me. I'm very honored to be considered, and thanks for listening to my rhetoric.
Oh, it was good rhetoric. It was good stuff.
Hopefully we'll
Awesome.
catch you out at the festival circuit.
I
when
look
stuff,
forward to seeing you.
opens
Come
up.
hang out in front of house. We'll have a drink.
Absolutely. Yeah, that'd be great.
All right, thanks. All right, well, that about wraps it up for us. So on behalf of Aubrey, our producer, my co-host, Matt, I am Aaron Dietzen saying thank you for listening to SketchUp Talk, and we will see you next time.
Thanks. This has been a Trimble Media production. Thank you for listening to SketchUp Talk. If you liked what you heard here today and you have an idea for an episode or a guest, you can drop us an email at podcast@sketchup.com. If you have a specific question related to how to do something in SketchUp, check out our forum at forums.sketchup.com. Thank you.